Hello everyone, Revan619 here. This is going to be a little bit of a different video because rather than showing a build or streaming or explaining something, what I wanted to do is a little bit of a deep dive on the spreadsheet builds of the Rogue Traders. This is because now that I have got close, or by the time this video comes out, finished all the companion build videos, people are going to be looking to what I'm actually doing with these builds and wanting to know more about how to play them. And whilst I am looking to do build videos on each of these builds, there is 30 plus, so that could be 30 days of waiting for content on that. And that could be a very long time to get to the very specific build people might want to be seeing or playing. So what I wanted to do was sort of explain the playstyle and why you take certain abilities with each of the builds, and then people on this video or on the Discord or the members area could let me know what builds they wanted me to cover first, so I can understand sort of the ordering of what we can do. And I was planning on using the new membership features. One of the reasons why I'd set it up was so if I can do 5 videos in a day to get the builds out, I still can't release all 5 at once because of the way YouTube algorithm works. It'll be one after the other, so it would still take 5 days to get it. Whereas if I use the memberships feature, I can schedule those 5 days so it doesn't get shredded in the algorithm for everything getting dropped in one day and annoy some people by having all these videos come out on the day. People who choose to buy into the memberships, they can binge watch them as and when they get uploaded rather than waiting for YouTube scheduling. Depending on the rate I can do that will determine how much value there will be in me trying to do that. But at the end of the day, I don't think people should have to subscribe to me or even do anything like that, which is why I have the spreadsheet. The spreadsheet was designed so you could look at that, and that's all you need. You don't need to watch YouTube. You don't need to send me money. You get this for free. When it comes to Dark Heresy, however, I will be doing that more for a members thing because I genuinely don't have the time to do this 2 games because I don't want to change anything for Rogue Trader. I want to keep this always free, just it be my passion. But Dark Heresy being an entirely different game, and the fact that it's going to be a more popular game, the reason that I started making content for Rogue Trader was I wanted to be the content creator that the community didn't have, because I was trying to learn the game, I struggled, and then I was like, oh god, I wish there was someone who's doing what I do now so I could have learned the game, which is why I ended up being the guy to do that. Whereas Dark Heresy, I think, is going to be very popular, so I won't even be necessary for that community, but it's something that I'll probably get around to doing anyway, so that's why I was going to move all of that stuff over there. And so I didn't kill the builds for other content creators, because one of the problems with running a spreadsheet like this, if it's good and people think it's good, you don't really watch YouTube guides, and that hurts other content creators. So I don't want to really do that with Dark Heresy, especially as a lot of new creators are going to be coming in and wanting to use this space. And I'd like to encourage the diversity of thoughts by having multiple creators, because I don't see other build crafters as competition. I see them as alternative ways to play. So the more, the better, in my opinion. With all that said, the introduction is out of the way. Let's actually start looking at some of these builds and what we got going on here. So the Commissar taking command is going to be the first one, and I've separated these all into the different origins. So what Commissar does is Commissar boosts your pistols in your main hand by ballistic score and fellowship, as well as being able to shoot allies to give another buff. Depending on which skill talent you take, how much fellowship investment is how much those buffs will do, and obviously if you kill the companion you shoot, you could get party-wide buffs. So this is something that is pretty much what a Commissar is and what it does. People who've played Dawn of War will be very keen and remember those sorts of heroes, and especially Dawn of War 2, and sort of what you can do with it. With that in mind, I do very much like the theme of Commissar and the fact that you have that risk of killing allies, and some other people might disagree. But so what I did for this first one, now for any buffer, the optimum choice is always to go Grand Strategist, because first turn wins. However, that's not mechanically the most fun thing to engage with, whereas say with this one, it's an officer, which gets some of the really good stuff, like some of the most important things to get on any officer build. So decisive response, that means you can buff and attack the same turn. Lasting impression, so your buffs are essentially more than just one round, is very important. Focus is something you can stack with multiple different abilities, so you can get a lot more use out of that, and it obviously boosting allies' ballistic skill and their perception. Steel Resolve is optional. That's something that will come more in with, say, Air of Authority and Inspiring Speech, which is about resolve stacking, and because I'm going into Master Tactician, resolve stacking is very good. So stuff like weapon personalization from Highvold, don't need it. If you want to be a damage dealer, the best one to go for is going to be Fortress World for gunners, but Highvold, again, will help boost resolve, so it was more of a theme that I wanted to go through. And yes, all my builds are designed and play tested on Unfair, and I don't even consider other difficulties, because obviously if I beat Unfair, I'll trivialize those difficulties too. So one of the things that this build does, it starts with move, move, move. Move, move, move is very important for getting your allies into position so you can bring it down and give a turn, because whilst you give them AP, you don't give them movement. So if you give an extra turn to a melee that hasn't had his turn yet, he can't do anything. Whereas if you can move him into position, he can attack. Or if he's already in position, you could kill an enemy, and rather than just leave him in the open, you can move him to cover. And there are ways that you can benefit to get that yourself, which is why I really like move, move, move. Air of Authority is very good for building Resolve, because the quicker you build Resolve, the quicker you get heroic actions. Heroic actions, Finest Hour, or even some of the allied ones like Daring Breach, absolutely break the game. So getting those early is kind of important. When it comes to Commissar, Summary Execution is you shoot them in the back, double bonuses. There is no reason not to take this. It's good. Let them know fear. When you did obscene damage was very good, because it could allow them to get temporary wounds for some of the damage they took. Not as important, and the best way you're going to use this is having two pistol sets. So you've got your damage pistol set, and you'll have a secondary pistol set where you've maybe got the weakest pistol you can find, and that's what you'll actually use to buff allies, because the damage you do doesn't really matter. So you press X or switch between your weapon sets, so you give them the weak shot to buff them. Characteristic train perception. Perception increases your turn order along with agility, but it also lowers enemy dodge. So it is something very useful for range builds, because range builds don't get agility to lower enemy dodge, so they need perception. So if I'm planning to shoot, I always build into it. When we go into Master Tacticians, what Master Tactician does is it can either buff itself or allies to boost its resolve based on the number of enemies they attack, which can then boost their damage, and you can also then gain stacks of hidden advantage to do a good attack yourself. You can even give them temporary HP with Strong Point and other abilities like that, or you can give them a little boost to finish off targets, but I think that's a bit more gimmicky, but it's something you can do. So obviously I go Linchpin first, because this is going to be the main thing that generates the usable part of Master Tactician to get their stacks. Reliance will up that. Joint Offensive means my attacks will also build it. Inspire is going to be the damage buff, so that's going to be very good to give to allies on top of your officer stuff, or even yourself if you want to try and attack, because Commissar with Motivation has the unique ability that it can generate movement after it attacks, so it can actually get involved itself. So originally I had for the Emperor, but I'm feeling that like investment in that is not is important. Like potentially we could even drop let them know fear and move that around, because if I just double check the talents, because like I said, I collect all the talents so everyone can see what they all do. So yeah, Commissar, let them know fear. When the Commissar is adjacent to an enemy, that gets more resolve, so that's there. But for the Emperor, yeah, I'm thinking now that they've nerfed the damage, I don't think for the Emperor is the one. I actually think Motivation is the one. So I've got a note here. So I will probably build into Motivation myself. I start off with just single pistol, having a sword mostly because it looks cool and for the little bit of parry chance, but you can also move into dual pistols, which I normally do by level 30, and then I put on the parry gloves, and then I also pick up the talent so Commissar can shoot with either pistol and pair holster. So you can buff, and you can fully buff an ally, get a 1 AP like Foe Hammer Shot in or Quickfire Las Pistol for 1 AP, and if one of those is a crit, you can then shoot with your other weapon. So normally you'll build the stacks from your first buff or given to allies, you'll attack to get some more, and then you can give more buffs in that way. But the one I've gone for, because I take Fervor, I buff myself, use Fervor, do a round of attacks, and then I buff myself again, and then press the advantage for then the pair holster attack. So it's you get the 2 attack enemies going in there. But if you just want to buff allies, you can do that too. And if you're thinking more about buffing allies, you'll probably want to work in Strong Point earlier and work in Fervor later. Something to keep in mind. Then obviously once we get into the exemplar things, so the reason I have these little asterisks is the asterisks are where you can swap. So you can swap talents here. So if you want to take Firebrand, so that will give more AP and bring it down first, you take that first, and you can take Eager for Battle later. As a buffer, having more AP is quite useful, and if you're using something like Commander's Chrono to go first, very important, but that is sort of Act 4 stuff. Eager Subordinates will increase their damage, which is good. Degrade Defense, because you are going to attack, building up stacks to Degrade Defense is really good. And Extermination, optional. You don't need that one. You can swap that to something else. I just like it because I'm going in for a little bit of damage myself, and Assign Objective is the same. So you will eventually pick up both Motivation for the Emperor, but obviously the late game, until we know if DLC 3 enhances Act 4 and 5, they are very content light. So you want your build to be finished by about here, because the last real challenge that you're going to see in the game is going to be Act 3. And then the real end boss is the Act 4 boss, which you'll be at around level 50. So everything after level 50 is just optional extras. Act 4, it's very content-light, but with the DLCs, you will probably get to level 50 for it. So this is obviously end game, then you've got your mid game, and then you've got your early game. So you will spend most of your time with those. So you want to have your first breakpoint. So this is going to be fighting Aurora. That's where you want that breakpoint. This breakpoint, like here, is going to be sort of entering DLC 3. So you want to have the perception to be able to shoot things here. Because if you don't have it here, chances are you're going to struggle against the Drukhari enemies, which is why my Exemplar ranks, because I didn't have them as much, because I was getting my agility for dodge, I've actually gone in perception before fellowship, because I think having here level 40s when you normally fight the Act 3 boss, that's kind of, if your build's not done here and it doesn't do what needs to be done, that's when you're going to get into a bit of a challenge. When it comes to gear, these are suggestions. Like, this is up to you. These are things that make note of them. And if you see one of these items and you see why I'm suggesting it, you can know what you need to change yourself. So you can get in to do that sort of thing yourself. Like I've said that you can have a second set of like las guns, snipers or shotguns. But if you just put in a weak pistol there, with the weakest pistol you can find, then you can freely buff your allies and not worry about killing them. The las pistols in the offhand here, because 1 AP burst, and then you can get the solid weapon in the main hand, like Daredevil pistol or anti-vehicle revolver, that will benefit from the benefits of being a hive world, and you can get all the bonuses there. You could even take in another thing like Bone Shatter or something here. But yeah, that's sort of why that goes in there. And it's the same with the gear. The gear, you want to boost your fellowship as much as possible. And the armor, getting in stuff that boosts your dodge, it helps with your initiative and it helps you not get shot. You can also use Chartist Pendant to use your fellowship for Law Imperium. And if you go into Law Imperium instead, you can then stack that for armor, stuff like the Breacher's armor, St. Cognatus, his scriptures. And there's a lot of ways you can use that. And even if you can't get Law Imperium straight away, you could always take like base skill Law Imperium and build that in yourself. And that's what anyone who wants to do impressive numbers, they always use strategies like that. Going into the Soldier Commissar. So I built two options this. The first one for plasma pistols, because it's very thematic, but there's no way to sugarcoat it. Plasma pistols are weaker than the shotgun pistols and the burst pistols. They just are, because they're single shot. Yes, they've got good attack economy, so they'll be fun early game, but by about mid-game going into Act 3, you'll notice that they just drop off a cliff in usability, and rate of fire gear, you start picking that up, so burst becomes way more beneficial. The aerial weapons you find will have obscene damage, like the Bone Shatterer. So the two options that I've put in here is, obviously, you've got plasma weapon efficiency or motivation. You've got external power block or summary execution, which probably you might want to actually put in summary execution earlier. Yeah, because summary execution I think would actually be more vital to the build. So actually, let's swap that here. And we can put for the Emperor there. Yeah, that's better. You always want summary execution. It's going to be more important to always have that. And that's why we check. Then, yeah, dual wield combat or safety training. Because of plasma pistol and external power block, you actually don't need dual wield combat, because you can actually take one shot with the offhand, which can generate a 3 attack with the main hand. So you can actually dual weapon fighting anyway. And then when you do pick up dual weapon combat later, you do get both attacks. Yeah, summary executioner. So we can change that to or the Emperor, or let them know fear. Yeah, because we want that earlier. Summary execution is so good. So you can pick there. Dual weapon combat if you've gone plasma route, or las weapon expert, so you can reduce dodges. So it actually helps with Act 3 quite a bit. Grenadier, very important. The reason I have Grenadier on almost every range build is ionized grenades. You'll definitely be able to get that colony project, and it literally halves enemy armor. Very important. It's always good to have them buffers as well. Going into the Act 3, so if we look at the way this builds, muzzle velocity, the more shots you do, the more damage you do. So good for burst weapons. Rapid reload, you are going to reload a lot, so you do want those reduced costs. Yeah, rapid fire, very important. Unfaltering fire will help with that. Fired up, more attacks you do, more damage you do, so that's all very important. The swift slaughter is getting in those kills to get more uses of reverend slaughter. That stacks your damage. Very useful to get that in on the soldier stuff early. Going into Arch-Militant. Arch-Militant is probably one of the strongest tier 2s that's outside of Executioner, and it's the only one that you can really do for mixed attacker, and it's also just very good for heavy guns and just general damage builds anyway, because it boosts everything. So Wildfire increases your attack economy, which I get that first. Reckless Rush combined with Always Ready and All Out means that you can just always keep your movement. So being able to move after attacking is why Arch-Militant is more valuable than almost every other tier 2, because movement, being able to attack and move and get back, like to leave safety, to kill, to get back to safety, it's so important. It's how you can be really hyper aggressive. Devastating attack's very good for getting your attack economy up, and because you don't really build into strength, that's why I don't really take kick. And the only reason I've got kick on this build is the stances just aren't good, because by mid-level you're always going to be critting anyway, and everything above 65 ballistic skill is just crit chance. So if you have 85 ballistic skill, that's 20% crit chance without buffs, without allies, without talents. So you're not going to get as much use out of the stance. As long as the extra turn meta exists, yeah, the stances are going to be way less valuable. If we ever move away from the extra turn meta, like say brutal mode removes extra turns, then stuff like the stances, Vanguard will be way more valuable. And even some of the weaker archetypes that don't turbo stack like movement and attacks, they'll also get a little bit more valuable. Rack and Ruin, we take that for enough bullets for everyone, because every 3 targets you hit increases your damage, whereas enough bullets for everyone, it's just your second attack in the round is stronger. Well, I say round, the current term. Enhanced blast area, yeah, that's okay, but Bird's Eye for the Emperor could be more useful if you're in trouble. Ready to Serve, obviously, you can give fellowship bonuses to allies and their resolve, so it's pretty good. I didn't actually build into heavy armor on this because you need peak condition to do it, and I didn't really want to take peak condition. And again, I'm still not sure if vital points is bugged or not, which is why I've put it as an option, because you can use stuff like you can put self-bleeding on with a consumable, so you can get 100% extra critical damage, and you can stack critical damage quite well. But again, I don't know if vital points is bugged. I need to test it, because I didn't see it working in 1.5 since I've been testing it for the last month, whereas it was in 1.4. Demolition Engineer, point blank, very useful if you get into the foe hammers, and it can also be used with the area attacks of plasmas as long as the explosion they're within 3 cells of you. So yeah, you can still get those on the plasma pistols. But this is going to be your, as long as you keep mixing between the attacks. So what you want to do is, say you open with the quick shot las pistol to get 1 AP burst fire. Then you want your next attack to be either single shot or area. So if you had a foe hammer in your main hand, which would likely be solid, you can get a lot more damage out of that. Or even stuff like the anti-vehicle revolver. So that could also be very useful. So putting one of those in on here, in one of them. So I have the hotshot las pistol, anti-vehicle revolver, the foe hammer. So stuff like that will be quite useful for you. Actually, I'll put a note that's in here. So anti-vehicle revolver, bone shatterer. Yeah, so just so you're aware that you can put in either way. And you do have the Bloody Mentor that comes in late Act 2, which that one can also be quite useful. So you want to think that if you maybe want to go that route instead. Then we've got the Iconic Commissar. So the Iconic Commissar means it's the playstyle people want. It's the sword with the offhand melee. Sorry, offhand gun, not the offhand melee. But the game doesn't directly support allowing mixed attacker, which means range and melee, because your tier 1 determines mostly what your build is able to do. None of the tier 1s support mixed attacker, whereas Arch-Militant has talents that can make it enabled, which is broad expertise and arms master. So if you do want to play into that, this is more the sort of, you have to kind of go into Arch-Militant. Now, a soldier Arch-Militant has no way to survive in melee and has nothing to boost melee, so that's not really the one. Whereas a warrior one, some of the warrior talents will apply to foe hammers, which is the shotgun pistols, and there is an item in the late game where burst weapons can, every time you crit, stack your strength damage on your melee, which is the Arch-Militant's cape, which you can get at the start of Act 4. So that means that warrior is the best route to do that sort of iconic look of having a sword and having a pistol, and it doesn't matter which way they are, you still get the normal charge. So you can have main handgun, offhand sword, still works. So I went for this one for bolter weapon efficiency and weapon personalization, not because bolters good. Bolters are the worst pistol type in the game because they are low ammo capacity, but it's because it's what people want to use, because that's what people want to create. Weapon personalization gets their rate of fire up, which is going to be super important for warrior because warrior can't boost that. Same thing as getting the extra armor pen. Warrior can't boost that. What it can do is opening strike will allow you to get more damage out of your bolter. Later on, stuff like easy target and crowd kill actually applies to foe hammers. So I've actually put that here. I'm actually going to swap that to here. So yeah, late game, you could still either keep the bolter and you can use Arch-Militant's cape, or if you want to do some real damage, you can swap to like the Bone Shatterer. So that those are options that you have for this one as well. You could even use the pair holster with like stuff like Arch-Militant here, so you can really stack up those rate of fires, but it's kind of more up to you. Like deadly positions in there, Marspan bolter. I probably should mention the good pistol. So anti-vehicle revolver. I've also realized I've done this the wrong way. For this to be usable, it actually needs to be main hand, so I actually need to swap them around. There we go. That would have set people up for failure. But yeah, so having it the correct way around, yeah, that's going to help. Daredevil pistol, or the other good solid ones, Bone Shatterer. So yeah, just mentioning them in so people know to use them. You can also use stuff like Order Strike and Power Sword, so your parries will counter attack as well. So you can really create that Commissar feel that you want to go with here. So moving on to Astra Militarum Commander. The way Astra Militarum Commander was boosted is it can now do a big one-turn fellowship bonus to your team's damage, which will stack more with your fellowship as you go through the game, and it will also make them immune to criticals. And if you're using lads guns, you can get an extra 40% rate of fire. The trench combat stuff, completely gimmicky. It's not the best. So one of the options that I've put on for here, which was using intelligence for the party-wide buff and grand strategist, which is something that is very popular. People love using Be Smart, and because using Be... Oh, I got a subscriber whilst I was recording this, thanks. But because Be Smart is something that people really like to use, I actually built an arc rifle around it, because arc rifles are very, very good. So this one doesn't focus on the lad side of things, but it's more about being a first turn officer that's going to be highly effective at buffing. I've already gone over sort of this sort of off stuff in the previous one, and all that will apply here as well. So this one is going to be about having your enemies in zones, being able to place them, and then bursting them down with these big arc rifle shots, but setting up the team. You're not a main damage dealer, you're an officer. Combat Locus Stratagem, very good for setting up extra defenses or doubling the bonuses of a zone. So this is one good one. Blitz Stratagem is the most useful thing in the game because you can actually get your allies moving to these stratagems. So if you, on that first turn, if your allies aren't where you need them to be, you can set up Blitz Stratagem, you can bring it down to them, and then they can just zip on over. And it's very good for retreating in Act 3. Overwhelm Stratagem can like proc stuff like willpower checks that will come in for your Arbiter stuff. So it's another really good one. But Field of Fire, for every attack you do, will build up your allies' rate of fire, which is going to be very useful with the arc rifles and building up extra attacks. So whilst you don't get high attack economy being an officer, if you were able to get out 2 attacks, you could get a 10% rate of fire buff to your allies. So it can be something quite useful for them. And because you are going first, you'll pick up stuff like Seize the Initiative. So when your allies get bonus turns before enemies act, you'll get a lot more out of it. So that's kind of more what you're doing with this build. And the items around that is all going to be about enhancing that sort of play style. Now, the Garda starter, the Militarum Commander, this one is very similar to the Soldier, except it's going to focus on las rifles and las pistols because your rate of fire will apply to both. And again, it's going to work almost exactly the same as the Soldier version, but going into Master Tactician. So everything I went over for the Soldier part in the Commissar, then combined with the Master Tactician part of the previous Commissar, you can do here. Alternatively, you could actually still build this into a Arch-Militant. If you actually copy the way that I built the Arch-Militant, but obviously change all of these purples to these purples, it still works. So if you wanted to play Arch-Militant instead of Astra Militarum Commander, you could do that. You could also build into power arm efficiency if you just take peak condition first. So that's also an option. For any of the membership guys, if you wanted some more customized builds like that, do just let me know on the memberships area and we can work together on some of that, and I can help you come up with your own builds for that. But yeah, so the way that you pick up the talents here, again, it's going to work the same as a sort of a hybrid of the previous 2 ones. And the sort of items you can take is going to be enhancing the soldier stuff, your dodge stuff, and also the Master Tactician stuff, like getting in things like the rate of fire gear, like tactical backpack. Tempestus Elite Carapace backpack can easily allow you to be doing 25 burst fires with these las rifles. So it's really good. Like the rate of fire stuff that you've got for las rifles with this update is absolutely huge. Over here, Lord Commander Militarum. So this was using heavy bolters in the last patch, but you now need specific talents for heavy bolters. So because this is already very talent hungry, I actually swapped it to using heavy stubbers. So what this does is, much like Argenta's build and the build that I covered there, this works the same, but obviously you're not a priest. So you'll actually you can use las pistols with this and a heavy bolter, or you can use shotgun. So it's up to you. That's actually a point. You could add in those hands. So I've not taken trench combat, but we'll make a note here. Use las pistols and trench combat. So if you wanted to put that in there, that's the way that you could customize this. You just got to think where you're going to take that talent. Because obviously familiar kitback is one way you could swap that, and never stop believing you'd probably want to get first. So what we could do is, if we swap that to here, from here, and then we could even put in trench combat here. And let me just check that is the correct name for the talent before I make a mistake, because I'm not in game where I can search it quickly. But trench warfare. Yeah, there we go. We got that corrected. So you could, yes, trench warfare. There we go. So these are options that you can build into that one, or you could just use a secondary lads rifle, but then you wouldn't have a close range option. So again, the same, more attack economy coming in from wildfire, more movement coming in from reckless rush, very powerful. Devastating attack sets up a lot of your stuff. So a lot of the damage talents in Arch-Militant is relying on reducing enemies' dodge, parry, their deflection, and their armor, and you have other talents that can prime them. So stuff like distract will set them up, devastating attack will set them up, and you can use stuff like dismantle to set them up, and there's quite a few. Or even if your allies reduce enemy stats like that, you can use that. Same with ionized grenades, that will actually proc. Talents like Breaking Point and Overpower is what separates heavy guns from regular guns and why they do so much extra damage. Field of Fire, because you're going to have a high attack economy on this build, the more attacks you do, the more attacks everyone will have in their burst fires. So it's incredibly powerful. And that, yes, it's for one turn, but that means that one turn will be exceptionally good. Moving on to the next one, Dishonorable Discharge. So this one is based around the exact same build, using heavy guns, but going in with the rune cannons, which you get in Act 3. And it's because now that you get deadly accuracy, you can add flat damage to stuff like the rune cannon. No, it won't be as strong as heavy bolters, but it will be stronger than heavy stubbers. So if you wanted to build into that, you could. Power arm efficiency, you can get the Artificer Power Arm, which means you can do 1 AP burst fires, which is absolutely fantastic. So it is a very good thing that you can do and build for her. The other one, Gunslinger Commander, this one specifically built for pistols and for las rifles, and I actually built it into a bounty hunter. Again, could change this to an Arch-Militant, but I wanted to add another play style. Works the same as, say, the previous Gunslinger builds I've mentioned, but as long as you're in full cover, 40% extra rate of fire, 20% if you're in partial cover. You can mix up pistols, and you can also mix up rifles. Stuff like quickfire and las pistol for 1 AP, being able to prop pair holster to give you a free offhand burst fire, very good. The way bounty hunter works is stuff like heightened concentration. That means that every crit you do will increase your armor pen. 1% of armor pen is more than 1% extra damage, and you can keep overstacking that to do quite a lot of damage. Abilities like Flay the Bold will boost it all up, and Hunting Surge will give you stuff like when you crit, you'll get extra damages coming in. The reason I took Cut to the Chase on this one earlier is so after your first burst, you can get a little bit of MP to reposition for your second burst. Chances are the first set of targets will die, so you'll want a little bit of movement, which you could then follow up with dash to get into a much better position, because that's like 7 cells of movement that extra you can get on top of that. Unflinching Heroism, good stat boost. Same with like Suppression Fire, just helps reduce their dodge, so that it becomes more useful for that sort of one turn. You don't always use the 1 per combat ability straight away. You want to sort of pick and choose when's going to be the best round to do it. Then we're going to move on to Navy Officer. So Navy Officer changes are very fun because it's something that you can use multiple times a turn, or not a turn, but per combat. So at the start, when you get 50% or when you lose an ally, and the braced effect is obviously now 5 cells instead of 3, and it adds deflection to you and all allies. pretty good in itself. But fleet combat training is the main draw of this now, which is every time you crit, you offhand attack, or every time you parry, you offhand attack, which means Vanguard's now an irrelevant type that you never need to use, so you can build into Arch-Militant, so you can get all of the damage and the movement with the counter-attacking. Another subscribe whilst I'm going through this. So very, 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 very useful. You could also, say you did want to use offhand gun for the aesthetics, this is the one to do it, because wasting AP on an offhand attack that can get no boost doesn't feel good. However, if you have a burst-only weapon in your offhand, every time you crit with your melee, which would be 1 AP, you'll do a free offhand burst, so you'll get 2 versatility, so you'll just be stacking versatility. If you put an offhand foe hammer, you'll be able to use stuff like easy target, crowd kill, and opening strike to increase damage. And if you want to proc opening strike, all you have to do is charge or use knockback from, say, a hammer ability, or the foe hammer itself. The shotguns that have knockback will actually trigger it itself. So yes, it's very good. So this one, the Imperial Navy Breacher, is designed for using 2 melee weapons. It can be very easily converted into melee and shield or melee and gun. I've then got the Navy Defender, which is converting the previous build into a offhand shield, because every time you hit with the melee, you'll smack them with the shield. And the more buffs you have, the stronger that gets. And that can also use stuff like Out of My Way to generate movement. But it means you push back Destroyer. And Destroyer and Degrade Defense, having them on your build can 10 times your damage output. They are 2 of the most vital talents for any melee build, so you definitely want those. Steel of the Forge and Heavy Armor is also going to be useful for getting your deflection up. Deflection happens before armor, so it's incredibly useful in the early game. Bit crap in the mid game, but in the end game, when you can stack deflection to the moon, like you can have like 20 to 30 deflection, you can essentially make it so enemies can't damage you. So it's, yeah, very good early game, very good late game, bit middling mid game. Defenses don't quite keep up in the mid game. But you obviously got the voice ability that you can lower enemy stats by like 30, so they'll never really be able to get past your parry. So you'll always get those counterattacks. And this one I did build into Vanguard, but you don't need to go into Vanguard at all. You can literally just put a shield on this one and you just use it on this one. Like, there's no reason not to. If you still want to have a secondary weapon, you just put in a Shield Master somewhere, so you can still have a 2-handed secondary like a Rock Saw. And now that Invigorating Resolve stacks temporary HP for all classes, again, Vanguard's irrelevant, because you can use Malpain Shroud and Invigorating Resolve on this. Turn 1, you can have over 300 temporary wounds anyway, and then you can just have all the benefits of Arch-Militant. It's why I think Vanguard's the weakest one, because everything it does is done better by items or other origins now. So the only reason you're really going into this is you like the name Vanguard. Like, it's the only real one for it. Again, for the gear for it, it's going to be stuff that increases your toughness, stuff that increases your strength, stuff that increases your weapon skill. And then later on, like Pneuma Boots in Act 1 reduces the cost of your charge, very useful. But then end game, you want stuff like Void Veteran Boots, which every kill generates a free charge, and there is obviously power armors that you can abuse the crap out of that with. I hadn't built this one into power armor, but you could very easily build this into power armor. If you wanted to do it, you could actually just take it here. So if I put a note here, if we just put in power armor, yep. Oh, actually, that drop down line we can put in proficiency as well. Efficiency. So you can just go, you can go into power armor very easily here. It's easy enough to do. Same we could do over here. Instead of taking defensive maneuver, we can just take power armor efficiency here. Because I made these builds before I'd gone further into them, I need to quickly, my bad, just mute that. You just heard Jefficus. Jefficus is currently streaming Rogue Trader, and I was watching that on my second screen. Whilst I'm recording, I was watching another stream. Jefficus is a great guy. He's a Dark Tide content creator. He brought me in with the Space Marine 2 guys, and he introduced me to First Horde Guardsmen. Fantastic guys. If you play Dark Tide or even Space Marine 2, and you're not following them, you should. Maybe that's how you found me, because they've mentioned me enough times. But anyway, looking at the next thing that we got going on here. So this is the what everyone wants to play since launch roleplay build. So this is what I was talking about. Offhand pistol. Navy officer is perfect for it because you get for free. it's just free, and it feels really good with a faux hammer. So this is like your shotgun and pistols, so those feel really nice with this one. So if you want to go into that playstyle, this is going to be the one you want to look at it. And the gear progresses quite nicely as you go through the game. And again, you'll still use all the same sort of stuff. Like you still want Invigorating Resolve, you still want stuff like Malpain Shroud, but you'll be, instead of using like an offhand shield, offhand secondary melee, you'll be going through the different variants of like shotgun pistols until you get to Act 4. And if you use Arch-Militant's Cape, you then switch it to something like a burst only las pistol, like the Soul Pattern las pistol, which you can get on the Hive World that's had its sun stolen, or you can get in DLC 4 in the train fight, as long as you don't go straight to the temple and you loot the bodies. I've also got Warp Madness. This is the Blade Dancer build. This is bloody hilarious. So it turns out every critical of melee procs your offhand attack. So if you make an Executioner Blade Dancer, it is incredibly powerful on a Navy officer, because if you jump in and do death from above, it offhands melees. So you then stack more dots, do more damage. If you Blade Dance, each critical on the Blade Dance procs offhand hits. So you can turn like an 8-hit Blade Dance practically into a another 4 on top of that, so a 12-hit Blade Dance. And it's the same with Death Waltz. But what's even funnier is everyone you hit does it. Say you hit 3 people with a Death from above, each one of them will get a follow-up hit, so you'll make 3 offhanded hits. And so when Death Waltz can do 6 additional attacks, that could be anywhere to 12 or more per enemy. So it's absolutely ridiculous the way Blade Dancer really works. So this is the Death World build. So the way the Death World build works is once you have Anatomy Expert in Executioner is kind of when this is online, and you just want to stack every trauma under the sun, because it doesn't matter if you get reduced AP cost or reduced toughness cost, because Medicaid determines your HP, and every kill generates death from above, and because of dots, your damage is going to stack really quickly, so chances are you're going to kill anyway. And now when you DFA, your offhand hit, and if it's the offhand that hit that kills them, you generate another death from above, so you can essentially create infinite attacks without using AP at all. You can create infinite movement without using movement by using Blood Oath to target people and Blood Rush to get 3 movement every time you target someone for an attack that now can't miss. It's so strong. It's so strong. The reason you take dance partners is it turns your agility into weapon skill. Weapon skill gets turned to Medicaid. Medicaid gets turned into health and armor and damage. So yeah, stacking them, really good. Same with Facing the End with Wounded Beast, and also slow bounce on the edge, so you can use both the Desperate Measure and the Heroic. And as you saw, the Desperate Measure is what allowed me to solo Aurora on Unfair with a Priest and a Psyker Death Welder. I'm pretty sure you could do it with Navy Officer because you strip so much armor, but it would be a little bit harder because you don't have some of their mechanics. But from Executioner, it's just as powerful. Looking next at so self-flagellation. So the way Priest got changed. Priest now has incredible potency to add to chain weapons, power weapons, flamers, and bolters, especially bolters. But you can still use the once per combat Litany of Hatred to do some massive damage here. And you can even have 2 weapon sets. So yes, you use agility and Drukhari weapons to stack your damage. But if you have a second set of power or chain weapons, you can build up your zeal to then get even more out of Litany of Hatred. And the death build still works the same as the previous one, but you've just got a lot more to do it. So the reason you go into Drukhari weapons is to get finesse, and with finesse, you stack damage from agility instead of strength. So it doesn't matter that you're losing strength for these DFA charges. Such a strong build. But I built a Sister of Battle. This one doesn't go for heavy guns, just so you don't overlap gear with Argenta, and because you'd need to fit in 3 more talents when this is already very talent hungry with Never Stop Believing and obviously getting in the Fortress World stuff. Being Fortress World, if you do bring it down and you do some attacks, chances are on your main turn afterwards you're going to have a free attack. So it's really strong. Bolt weapon proficiency, Tenets of Retribution, Litany of Hatred is going to make you just trivialize every encounter, and it's going to be party-wide buffs. It's going to be so damn strong. Hail of Steel helps you build it up. Getting into Flamers means that you can swap out shotguns. So early on, you'll be using you'll be starting with Lads rifles and shotguns. Then you'll be upgrading to bolters, and then in Act 2, you'll be upgrading to Flamers because you don't need to be in close combat anymore. And then once you get into later levels, now I haven't built this for power armor, but You could. You could very easily still go into power armor. I do go into flame weapon expert, but so you can get big, wide 1 AP flame attacks, so you can build up versatility really easily. But that, yeah, this is already quite talent hungry, so that's kind of the only reason that I didn't put in peak condition and heavy armor. Hell, you could even put that in at level 54 if you really wanted to, but I didn't see any reason to go into heavy armor because there just wasn't anything that demanded this build had it. So I found that just the Death World or the Hive World origin armors were good enough. So that's why I'm building that. Another guy said whilst we're recording this. I really should have turned those notifications off. I'm so sorry. But at least I'll keep them in, because if people are subscribing, then they should get a little bit of a shout out there. So yeah, also very, very strong. There are other versions of this build that we could easily make, but this is just kind of what I went with first, and I wanted to test some more stuff. So one of the disappointing things is Noble is a very low impacting origin. Like, if you asked AI thinks Noble's the best origin in the world, but Noble adds essentially nothing. So on an officer build, you'll get very mild buffs to your person that you're buffing, but chances are from the mid game you won't even notice it. It is nice to get it on party wide, but increasing allies crit chance when they're always going to crit doesn't really be beneficial. And the fact that you need to attack something for them to get extra AP, not very good either. That's why Noble needs a buff. The best thing about Noble is it has the most roleplay content, so you actually have a lot more engagement than other origins, but that's about it. But also the outfit looks great, so there is that. I did design a offhand, like, more combat role ones. This one is based on Caligos's wind scale, the other rogue trader that you meet. So this is just a warrior that's got an offhand gun, and it's about having him fun and just going and crushing, destroying stuff, because your origin doesn't really matter. So I built it to go into power armor, and this is a very roleplay heavy build. It'll have a lot of story engagement, a lot of story reactability, and you just feel like such a, like, you literally a privileged noble that's been given the status of rogue trader. You're just going around hacking up things with your little personal retinue. So it's a very fun, like, theme to go for. The reason I don't have any other builds for it is you could just slap it onto any of the previous ones and it just takes away the origin, but you can still use it. So yeah, the Owlcat, please buff, please. So we're going to start looking at Crime Lord next. Okay, moving on to the Crime Lord builds. Crime Lord did not receive a buff or any changes in 1.5. And the problem with Crime Lord is it has stuff that does work with perception, but overall it's actually designed for a Blade Dancer, which is weird because when this came out, Blade Dancer didn't exist. So it boosts weapon skill and it boosts agility and it does stuff with perception. Operative can't really use any of that. It can use perception, which is kind of nice, but doesn't quite benefit from it. So I would like to see in the future Crime Lord to have some rework so it benefits more Operative, and you could possibly have paths so it could be melee, so you could do a warrior or blade dancer, or if it focused more on range, so it could also do soldier and operative. That would be quite nice. Thematically though, it's probably going to be the one you use because it adds something to operative. Like, you can get a little bit of damage from like Killing Edge and Killing Plan and stuff like that. Well, not Killing Edge, sorry, but Killing Plan from that. So the way that I build for operative is obviously getting medicate early can be very useful because you can at least use some of that AP to heal up. But your main mechanic is going to be revolving around exploits. Now, exploits do not activate on extra turns. When you get given a main turn, you will throw out one exploit to everything you can see, and then allies can add more. So it's very important to get Uncanny Sight first. Popping exploits is how you build up your base damage. So a arc rifle is very good because it will do multiple single target shots. So if you hit 4 people with an arc rifle, that's 4 times of exploits. So that's 8% extra arm pen and 4% extra fat damage coming in there. And I think it might, I need to double check if it's base damage or flat damage, but I think it's flat. Anyway, but that is quite useful. Now, currently there is a bug. Exploits are not being popped by burst attacks or by area attacks, which thus shotguns and obviously plasma area attacks, but they do gain the damage benefit. So if you have a group of enemies that have 10 exploits and you do a shotgun blast, you'll gain the bonus damage of having those 10 exploits, but they won't be used. So it won't activate Tides of Excellence, but it will increase your damage. Same with a burst fire. You can just burst fire into a pack of enemies and you'll just drastically increase your damage. This is probably something they do need to fix, but some of their talents as well also don't work without it. So Bliss Calculation, when enemies are probably between 12 cells or less as you level up your perception, I think you can cut it down to about 5 quite easily. You get 15% extra damage if you hit a target with exploits, meaning area attacks and burst attacks won't ever be able to proc Bliss Calculation, but it also means during extra turns, this is a dead talent. So stuff like Sharpshooter, Perfect Spot, and Sniper Expertise, because they don't use the exploit feature, are actually way more valuable. Way more valuable. Same with Fresh Target. Fresh Target is actually more valuable than Ballistics Calculation. So if you wanted to, on any build, put Fresh Target before Ballistics Calculation, perfectly valid, perfectly viable. Same with Sharpshooter. The problem with Sharpshooter is you're not allowed to move. It increases your ballistic skill, it increases your damage, but you're not allowed to move. But you can, say, move on an extra turn, end your turn, and then when you get another extra turn or your main turn, you will then benefit from Sharpshooter. So, but yes, the main issue and drawback to Operative is obviously that the debuff is quite low impact. Trying to actually get the exploits going is quite low impact, because to actually be able to get any real exploits, you need passive learning, so they have more than one exploit on it. You then need comprehensive analysis and continuous analysis, so you can get another exploit on it, and then you can add more as you then use Analyze Enemies. Even with stuff like Servo Skull to AoE spread exploits are still so low impact that being able to put like 3 exploits out there doesn't really matter. And then that means you need to be close enough to be in the range, so you have at least 2 on there before you even use Analyze Enemy, and it just makes it very tricky to use. So Operatives, they're very low value, and they do need a lot of buffs. The only thing that keeps Operative relevant is the fact that Ida is a Psyker, so she's just naturally high damage, and Pascal has unique plasma talents that extra attacks will rapidly build its damage. That is the only thing that's keeping Operatives going. A player-based Operative sucks, unless you're using stuff like Fortress World to increase your attack economy, which means you need to use extra turns, but that also means you're then not getting your main kit being used, which is exploits. So it's all really counterproductive. So with Fortress World, again, Never Stop Believing will turn your willpower, not your bonus, your actual points, into your minimum amount of stacks of Never Stop Shooting. Every kill will count as 10, and then if you've got stuff like the reloads for Spare Magazine, that's quite useful. And Spare Magazine is very important because obviously 3 AP cost to reload is pretty huge, especially on low ammo capacity, which is normally single shot weapons. And unlike Soldier can obviously lower that by 3, Plasma can lower that by 3, Snipers and Arc Rifles cannot. So trying to reload is actually crippling to your turn and to find the star, which is why Expert Finesse on Bounty Hunter is so important, because killing a tier 4 or higher enemy will reload your gun and do another attack, and even just getting the reload, that saves you 3 AP. The other problem that you then have is most encounters don't have elite enemies. Seeing tier 3 enemies is rare in most encounters. Seeing tier 4 and above is almost none. Yeah, we need better encounters. We really do, for Operative and Bounty Hunter to get more value. Like on paper, Bounty Hunter should be stronger than Arch-Militant, but because most encounters are trash mobs, it's actually not. So it's hard to get your stacks going really well. But yes, Tide of Excellence should be better, but obviously most things aren't proccing it, other than like Sniper Rifles, which can only get 1. Arc Rifles use it very, very well. Vital for Arc Rifles. Uncanny Sight to actually get as many exploits out as possible, also very vital, even though you only get on main turns. Like, they need it for extra turns. So you just need to keep telling the devs, like, please let Operative play the game. Litany of Insulation is very good for Arc Rifles, stops you hurting allies, and again, stuff like Overclock Module and Residual Charge, also very useful, because you can slowly start building up extra attacks, and like Staggering Jolt as well to increase the damage, good. Echo Pulse, optional, you get rid of that. You could put in Familiar Kickback in earlier if you wanted as well. But yes, increasing the range, not hurting enemies, and every time you've hit 10 enemies, get an extra attack economy, very good. Increased attack economy for Operative is unbelievably good, because they only get 1 attack, and a lot of their tier 2s don't always enhance it. Luckily, Bounty Hunter does, because Bounty Hunter can obviously use Claim the Bounty to increase it. It can use Hunter's Ambush to increase it. So if you hit a staggered or a stunned enemy, then you can get another attack coming out of here. So Hunter's Ambush, very important, and especially with tactical goggles, self-calibrating goggles or self-calibrating helm, which I do recommend over here. very, 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 very important to increase your attack economy. So you do want to use those. Very good for Pascal on Bounty Hunter or Yearlet on a Bounty Hunter. Heightened concentration, your crits will increase your armor penetration, so that's very important for this build, as well as Hunting Surge, which crits will increase your damage. And then obviously killing praise is very important, and finishing off praise will claim the bounty to get more AP. So Operative is one of those ones. If you have high tier like value enemies and you're killing, then you'll actually run out of the 12 attacks that you can do and find out before you run out of you'll run out of enemies before you run out of things to attack. Like, you'll have more AP than attacks that you can have if you manage this correctly. Bounty Hunter is very good for that. But you do need to plan the pre-phase quite early, because technically you can even take swift movements for that extra 2 AP, so you can actually choose a bigger zone where you can place, because the amount of MP your character has determines the bit size of the zone that you can place them in the first round of combat. So that is the one advantage that the Rogue Trader has, is because they have so many colony talents that can increase how much MP you have at start, you can actually place better than most companions. So awareness is going to be good. Again, in any intelligence checks is going to be good, like intelligence for Xenos and stuff. None of the companions can actually cover Law Warp very well, even though someone like Cassia needs to. But again, Death Dealer to increase your attack economy, very, very, very good, very vital. Deadly Aim, because you're going to probably have a lot of perceptions, also quite good. Vital Points on anything that has extra crit damage, if it's working, should be good. But again, I'm not too sure if it's even working, so you could always change that to Extermination. I do need to still test it. I keep saying it. But yes, so to play this, basically, so for this one, it's a lightning arc rifle based bounty hunter. So you want to use someone like Cassia to group up enemies, and then you want to just start blasting them with exploits, which might not even be up because, well, you can only get them on main turns, which is why Pascal's useful to have, because as Pascal's a secondary bounty hunter, if he has Save of the Kill when you kill a prey, he'll get a turn. He can use Machine Spirit Communion to spread one exploit to whole groups of enemies, and if you can hit like 5 enemies with that, your next shot is going to gain 5 stacks of Tide of Excellence. So that's very useful to you. Dismantling is also very good with arc rifles because it will spread out and hit many enemies, so very useful there. This build over here, Cloak and Dagger. So this is a warrior assassin that, because Shearing Strikes is bugged and it doesn't work with rigorous training, you lose all your MP when you use it. But with shields, you don't lose MP, and you can actually use defensive maneuver to generate MP. So this build can actually keep using slash and generate MP and move around more than other versions of it. It's a gimmick that only exists because Shearing Strikes is bugged. Once Shearing Strikes isn't bugged, you won't need a dagger and shield build. But the main thing that you use here is, if you can on main turn get openings, you can keep using slash to your as much agility as you have to do lots of versions of slash, and then you can try and do a big hit with Killing Edge on a boss. Once you get malign influence with this build, every willpower check that you do will do direct damage, and direct damage is something that gets enhanced by lethality and notes on weakness, which is why this is kind of more of an Act 4 build. And that means that weapons like the Interrogator Knife or the Ritual Knife, and the Ritual Knife is RNG chance to get. I'm not even sure of a 100% farmable way that you can get the Ritual Knife, but if you do get it, you can do AoE willpower checks whenever you attack. There's some items and some colony talents that can allow you to do willpower checks. So the more ways that you can stack willpower checks, the more damage to do it, and it creates something called the Death Aura build, which is basically by walking around with Fiend of Viabo 6, because that means when you walk near enemies, they make willpower checks. With Malign Influence, every time they make willpower checks, they take direct damage. The more direct damage that you do, the more it stacks up, the more things die. And then you use Slash with weapons that can generate 2 willpower checks with Lethal Threat and, say, Interrogator's Dagger or Ritual Knife, and then you just explode the map by walking around. Do check some of my Mirashi Death Aura build videos that I've got a couple on the channel. It'll show you how to do it. It's really good. But for this kind of warrior is a very defensive melee type, but it does have some good access to some things for agility types, such as rigorous training, so you can charge and keep your movement and gain dodge. Desolation adds dodge to your melee, which is quite big. Impetus, you can add your toughness and your strength extra to your charges, which is nice. But yes, Blade Flurry and Shearing Strikes on top of Breakthrough. Once Shearing Strikes is fixed, I will be able to create a lot more viable assassin builds and a lot more other builds from Warrior that are agility based. But until we have that official fix, I've not really gone into it. And I am using a mod fix, which is linked in the Discord, and it is in the pinned comment of the Rogue Trader section. But yes, the way Assassin works is basically whenever you hit openings and do direct damage, you can increase your lethality, and you want to use the talents that increase your lethality by doing direct damage. So they sort of feed into each other. There are also some ways that you can proc checks with like disarray, so you can immobilize enemies, and then by doing immobilize with some certain origins and other like talents, you can then proc willpower checks, which will then proc malign influence. So there's a lot of really good things you can hit, and you can even use stuff like morbid pirouette with dance macabre to hit openings. So it is quite useful to do that. Death Whisper will increase your attack economy, and Killing Edge is going to be your main killing power. But yeah, like I said, it's just you need openings, and openings don't work in extra turns. It's the same as the Operative issue. So that is something that comes in and hurts you a little bit. The Scout Sniper build is basically Cyber Eagle with a sniper rifle, and this one goes into Aldari weapons, so you can use Deadly Accuracy to add Perception, flat damage to your criticals, which, not base damage. If it's base damage, just be really overpowered. But flat damage will help get it out, and the Eagle is actually very useful for picking off enemies, because as the Eagle comes in, it does an AoE, then it can individually target and hit something. It can also do AoE blinding attacks and AoE strafing attacks. So the Eagle, whilst the damage isn't amazing, it is enough to help you pick off trash. So the Eagle can clear the trash whilst you focus and snipe the higher priority targets and cripple their defenses. So whilst you're not really a boss killer, you're a boss crippler. That's what snipers like rifles in here. They're not designed to clear encounters in Rogue Trader. They're there to add CC and help control the flow of battle, but they can't do an extra turn. So if you don't build them into Grand Strategists, they're not in use. But if you build into Grand Strategists, you can't attack. So swings and roundabouts. It's just, yes, Operative does need a lot of buffs here. But yes, so basically when you boost up the Eagle, you can put bait on an ally, and with joint analysis, that means every time someone attacks that ally, the Eagle will attack them, and it will do extra damage if they have exploits, and it will also do extra intelligence bonus damage from you on top of that. So you've seen me in a couple of encounters, I've done that in Ablard, and then the whole battle's been cleared by enemies trying to attack Ablard, so it is quite funny. And you just take talents that boost Eagle's stats, or gives it extra health, or increases its deflection when it attacks, because obviously when it comes in to use obstruct vision, which can cause enemies to shoot each other, it will shoot you, the Eagle. So yeah, you have to sort of keep that in mind. Moving on to the Kazbalika Cold Trader. So this one again builds into Aldari weapons. So this one is a Fortress World, and it is a Bounty Hunter Sniper, whereas this one was obviously a Cyber Eagle Fortress World Sniper. So that's the main difference here. We also build into Aldari weapons. You can build into Drukhari weapons and get the extra stuff there. Not as strong, but it's something useful, because some of the Drukhari snipers that you can also get burst fire on can be useful secondaries, though I would prefer to go Aldari sniper with a shotgun secondary, or even you can also use secondary melters with it, but the melters, melters need a buff. They're definitely the weakest weapon type in the game. It will play very similar. It will pick up the stuff from that I mentioned from Bounty Hunter. So you'll have very high armor pen. You'll have very high armor shred, and you'll do a lot of extra damage for it. Bounty Hunter on any encounter that has more than tier 1 and 2 enemies will vastly out damage Assassin. But if you only have tier 1 and tier 2 trash mobs, then Assassin can actually out damage it, but not by much. Like Assassin at its best barely performs better than Bounty Hunter at its worst. Like it's very interesting. If we look at the so the Forge Flayer Overlord, this is a very fun build. So this was designed to maximize Blade Dancer with Arch-Militant to stack versatility and use Crime Lord. This is essentially what Crime Lord was designed to do. Blade Dancer, high attack economy, very powerful. It can kills generate extra attacks, so Blade Dancer is very strong. Death Warden will turn Medicae into extra crit damage. Blood Rush with Blood Wrath will generate MP, so you can constantly move around and target things. Killing Plan will increase your damage, so you can use that right before you then go in and attack an enemy. Escape Artist, also very good to get extra death from above. Acrobat Archery with Guillotine will mass clear the map. If you didn't wipe out the enemies, you'll double your damage coming back if they're below half health. So it's really strong. And Sweeping Motions will allow you to do 1 AP melee area attack. So you can use this with 2 weapons or 1 weapon. This one I designed to be 2-handed, but if you put in dance partners, you can easily use dual weapons. And with going into Arch-Militant, you can, like I said, DFAs and area attacks, then you can then do a single attack, or you can do area attacks which cost 1 AP from the sword to also then do big damage to build up versatility. Going to Kai weapons again, finesse means you can stack agility over strength to do extra damage. It's very strong. Contingency plan will also keep giving you back your uses of Surefire Plan. And the fact that you can have like devastating attack, that you can pick up distract, you can pick up stuff like well, yeah, with devastating attacks, you can lower enemy armor, you can lower enemy dodge, and then you do extra damage from your other Arch-Militant talents. Again, very strong. And captive audience with grand performance will armor strip higher than any bounty hunter can dream of in your blade dance. Like, it's so very powerful. And the same with your death waltz upgrades. Like Aurora, if you just death waltz him, will insta die to any version of blade dancer. It's such a strong archetype. The only thing you have to keep in mind is if you use a lot of DFAs, you can stack up to minus 100% dodge. Yes, if you have 300% dodge, that's still 200%, so it doesn't matter. But it just means think about where you end your turn, and that's why you take back at archery to reset your turn back to where you started. So if you're in a safe place when you start, and then you wipe out half the map, maybe there's 2 people left, and you've now got 2% dodge. You just activate archery back, you're safe, they can't attack you. So Blade Dancer, still OP, didn't get nerfed. Coming down to sort of the last section, well, second to last section, we've still got Psykers, is going to be the Arbites. Arbites are bloody amazing. They're very strong with shields, they're very strong with shotguns, and they have 3 different versions. They have Castigator, which works very well for Operative and Officer. They've got Subductor, which works very well for Blade Dancer and Warrior. And then they've got Vigilant, which can work on Operative, but isn't the best, but it works incredibly well on Soldier. So they stack Coercion to do a bunch of extra things, and Coercion is one of the easiest skills to raise in the game regardless of your archetype, because you can easily get 60 extra fellowship through colony events, so you don't really need to boost it, because you can have 80 to 90 fellowship just by being iconoclast. So yeah, just it's very easy to get as long as you're picking those things. I think if I remember here, I actually had a list of everything you needed. So if I just quickly check that. So places that you can build the extra fellowship. So you have access to Janus Warlord, which gives 10. A Bestower of Freedom gives 3 times Iconoclast ranked fellowship. So if you have 5 there, that's another 15. You get Mastery of the Shadow Expanse, which is another 10. Then you can get another 5 from Blessing of St. Cognatius, for a total of 40. And then you've got Commissar's Cap, which can give you 50. And then you can get Iron Cape for another 60, which also boosts your agility. And then all of that also is crit chance. So yeah, so you can easily massively boost fellowship without ever having to put a point into it. So Arbites is very easy to stack up Coercion. And then they've got items that can put ballistic skill into your Coercion as well, so you can get another plus 60 from there. So it's very, very, very easy to build. So Paw Patrol Ride and Chase basically again highlights why Vanguard is redundant. So you build a warrior with thick skin, increases your parry chance and gives you a deflection based on your armor, so it's pretty good. +1 deflection, that is parry chances from the armor. Hardened Scars, every time you get hit, you get extra deflection. You can use there's the Contempt one, I forget what it's completely called. Clenched Teeth, that's it. Clenched Teeth, but it'll only prevent 1 attack, so if you're going to 1 turn, it doesn't matter. But Hardened Scars to take multiple hits will be good. Rigorous Training obviously keeps your movement after a charge, so if you're not going to Arch-Militant, that's very useful. Set of Hand Justice will basically give the benefits of the parry chance from swords over to hammers, which is very strong if you can do that. Steel of the Forge means that you can't be force moved or knocked down whilst in heavy armor, so very strong. And the fact that your Forge World will turn that toughness into more armor. So the heavy armor, this is obviously a very tanky build. But because it's a warrior gets Joint Hunting. Joint Hunting, what that does is every time you're attacked, the Cybermassive gains temporary HP, and then per temporary HP on Cybermassive, your armor and damage and attacks get increased. So not no attack count, that is. But that means if you're also Iconoclast and you're using Malpain Shroud, if you just set the dog to protect you, you use something like Reckless Strike, so you attack and they attack you, and you just keep getting hit, your temporary HP, especially with Invigorate and Resolve, will go to the moon, it will stack Malpain Shroud, it will stack Joint Hunting, and you'll also stack the dog's temporary HP, so you'll hit harder than any other setup in the game on melee with these hammers. And if you take things like dual weapon combat, you can offhand shields very easily. If you get in melee weapon specialist, you can smack things across map like your Sauron. Armor piercing will make it easier for you to hit like through armor, because your follow-up hits will have armor pen. Law and Order means you do extra damage when you've been given extra turns. Again, in perceptions, obviously I always build perception at least 2 points for Act 3, because Drukhari is a very high dodge, so you stack agility and perception, and if you're not a high agility build, you definitely need perception, and any range build as well. So yeah, you will do a lot with this, and then obviously you can use the dog to like get extra movement, you can increase its stats, you can have it AoE to reduce enemies' parry and stuff, so it's very strong. For all melee builds, like I said, Destroyer, Degrade, Defense, two most important things you can get because it drastically increases your damage output. Each follow-up hit will just keep doing more. Destroyer will lower that armor, so your next hit will do more. Degrade Defense puts on extra flat damage, well, percentage damage now. It used to be flat, but it will just drastically increase your damage. Like, I've done a test where I was hitting for 200 damage, did 4 hits, 200, 200, 200, 200, 200, fine. Put on Degrade Defense, 200, 250, 300, so on and so forth. Put on Destroyer, by the time I was doing that 4th hit, I was doing over 2k per hit. So it was like 10 times from the original test. So yeah, Destroyer, Degrade, Defense, incredibly powerful. Eager for Battle, increasing your AP means 2 more potential attacks on Finest Hour or Daring Breach. So again, very good. Out of My Way, knockback can be turned into MP. So for classes that don't have access to it, so with Melee Weapon Specialist, you can make your knockback cost 1 AP. So as long as you use Out of My Way with Melee Weapon Specialist, you just keep generating MP and you won't get movement stuck after you attack, though if you kill them in a single hit you will still do that, so that's something to keep in mind. The Mandalorian is a vigilant arbitrator build, basically all the great soldier stuff that we know, except for you get loads of benefits to shotguns, like Demolition Engineer means your shotgun damage is increased by your demolition skill. Point Blank means that if they're within 3 cells you do extra damage, and shotguns will also knock enemies back that are within 3 cells. Very, very powerful stuff because it can make them skip their turns. You then combine that with all the wonderful things that you have just on a regular bounty hunter. Much win. The reason you still have Hunter's Ambush is you want a secondary weapon that has a single shot option. So if you have anything that's immobilized or stunned or still alive, you just take a single shot and you'll actually generate another attack. So stuff that can be useful for that is, it's one of the rare cases where Double Slug is actually useful because you can use that to proc Hunter's Ambush. Though I still think it's very important to make sure you get dash and concentrated fire first. You could even take Double Slug here instead of Hot on the Trail, and you just move Trail and Shatter around somewhere else, and you get something like Guidance a little bit earlier, so you can just move that over and just put that over there. Yeah, Camaraderie is also good if you have the pet. So one of the things that for the soldiers, if you do have the pet and you're a soldier, having Camaraderie and just having the dog follow you around will increase your damage by ballistic skill. So very, very MVP thing for pets. Yeah, most of this other stuff I've gone over explained in other areas, but yeah, just getting the other talents to do it. Like, I did a whole video explaining useful talents, so do have a look at that after this, because that will help. That will be in my beginner's guide section. Looking at the Judge Dredd build was basically the bear version of Solomon. Double Shotgun Arbitrator, has the dog follow you around. Literally, just by having the dog follow you around, if you take Camaraderie, which I take at level 36 here, it just enhances your damage. It just makes you better at doing what you do with a shotgun, just running around, double shooting. Advanced Tracking, as you move with the dog, will increase the dog's damage. Strategic Adaptation, if you kill something when you have over 50% wounds on the dogs, it will refund your attack. And obviously, Dual Weapon Combat increases your number of attacks. You can get really cool items like Crescendo to keep going. So you essentially just want to keep moving and lining up your shots. Firearm Mastery Upgrade 1 means that when you have your heroic action, you won't use your MP after you shoot. And there are a couple of item combinations to increase it, which I do talk about in the Solomon video if you want to check that out. The Chief is a very special castigator build. It's basically about stacking Law Imperium to give you extra armor. So it's a Grand Strategist Officer Buffer build, but it has very high toughness and very high armor, so you can survive in the front lines. And the whole gimmick around it was basically making it not quite Cassia, but it meant that you can stack enemies up, you can then do loads of extra damage, you can buff them, and you're freely in the front lines with a shotgun parrying attacks and shooting enemies. So very, very, very fun build, and very similar to my other Grand Strategist and Officer builds I had explained. Basically, you set yourself up in front, you drop down your Combat Locus Stratagem on your front line whilst you're in there, and things just can't hurt you. And if you have someone else that can buff you up to increase your toughness, more armor, because you are a Forge World Subskin armor build. Very nice. And obviously any tax opportunity will also mobilize enemies so they can't move past you to attack allies. So especially because of lawful intervention, if they walk past you, and enemies will because they don't recognize your shotgun as being a threatened area, you'll get a bonus attack and you'll shoot them and it will stun them, and it's going to be AoE, so that's very good. Shield Dancer is going to be the Blade Dancer with a shield, which can also use a dog. Very similar to how the Warrior one works, but you have to be very careful to where you put the dog, because when you blade dance, the dog blades dance, and that can kill you. But essentially you can just tell it to follow you around until you get near a boss, and then you basically tell it to apprehend the boss, you DFA to one side and and you both blade dance and absolutely shred it. If you had access to Grand Performance and you use that, that can also be very, very good. I picked Veil of Blades, but you could actually switch that to, say, Acrobatic Artistry. I just wanted to have the little parry thing in here, but Acrobatic Artistry in here with the dodge gives you Death from Above. It's also very useful. I take it later here, but you could take Captive Audience and Grand Performance much earlier to get the armor strip. But yeah, again, it's because you do also get arm penetration from being an Arbites. It's why I hadn't prioritized that. So you can see sometimes I don't always pick the best of things. I pick what could be an engaging and interesting build. But these are all build skeletons. It's designed for you guys to change and customize things. Gets Drukhari weapons and finesse because obviously stacking more agility to damage. It's always good before you get access to peak condition to increase your strength by your total wounds. The Terminator is just a heavy gunner shotgun build. That's all it is. It's vigilant that uses heavy guns. So you can do 1 AP burst fires thanks to power armor efficiency and the artifice of power armor. And then you can follow up with really high damage shotgun shots that will knock back and stun things. Fortress World to increase attack economy. A lot of fun to go in here. Now, where things will start to get interesting is as you start looking at some of the Psyker builds. So this is the build that I soloed the game with on Unfair. It is the Death World Sanctioned Psyker Pyromancer. Didn't get nerfed in 1.5. A load of people say it got nerfed. It didn't get nerfed. They just sort of made it more vulnerable by dodge reductions, but it's still very usable. So the way this works is you want to play it normally until you have both Wounded Beasts and Facing the End. Once you have them, wounds and traumas will actually increase your agility and your willpower. By doing so, you can use dance partners to increase your weapon skill by your agility, and you can then later turn that into Medicae because your weapon skill enhances your Medicae, and then your Medicae will enhance once you go into Executioner your HP from Anatomy Expert. And if you take Anatomy Expert and Perfect Anatomy, you can then increase your armor by it. Now, any toughness that you might have can actually regen your health, which is useful, but the way Executioner works is by doing armor strip with stuff like Fragile Playthings and Melting Armor, or even Grand Performance from Captive Audience, you can then use Racking Weakness to do a lot of extra damage based on Medicae. So it's all about stacking Medicae, and it all funnels into itself. So if you put 4 traumas on and an injury, you can have basically level 55 with buff in Act 1, agility and willpower, which you then funnel into weapon skill. And by weapon skill, it funnels it into Medicae, which then funnels that into HP and armor. So there is a lot that you can do and just keep stacking into it. So stuff like Destroyer is very useful here. Because this one, you don't take Drukhari weapons, you do a little bit less damage for a while, which is where you then eventually get Blade of Light, and you also use the Cursebringer swords, which will actually... so the Incinerator and the Cursebringer will add an extra dot. And so your damage will even out and actually do quite a bit more in the end because you have that extra dot. But for a little bit, so from this little area going over to here, you will feel a little bit of power drop. Then in actually you get massive power jump again because you get Hand of Offense as well as, again, Blade of Light. So it evens out. Potentially you could try to work in Blade of Light earlier, but I've already pushed back a lot of these psi rating increases. So try and work out where to get. You could possibly take it here instead of Psyker Terminus and then take it up here. So yeah, that is an option. Yeah, is an option. So BOL and Psyker Terminus. So yeah, there are options. Fire Within is still really good because I can give you extra attack economy, but you need to crit 8 enemies or kill 8 enemies. Inflame, less useful, so the reason that got moved heavily back is because Inflame was used to use the map clear, which is what did get nerfed and changed from the playstyle. So less important, but it will slowly increase your damage at the end of the game. But you could technically even swap this with Firestorm if you wanted to just focus on the melee and not to go with that. Actually, no. Ooh, no. Can you even take Inflame before I might need to double check that. I think you can take Inflame without Firestorm because you've got Orchestrate Flame. I think Orchestrate Flame and Firestorm are both the requirements. Oh, that's a quick hot test of my memory there. Moving on to Lean the Slayer, currently bugged. There is a bug that you can parry the Inferno attack of the Psyker Staffs. Hopefully the devs will fix that. Basically, the way this build works, pure double staff caster. You use Sanctic to do big AoEs, and you use the Pyromancer staffs to do high attack economy rate of fire stuff, because it kind of works like a burst fire. It uses strike count, so it doesn't benefit from all rate of fire gear, but it does benefit from some, like the Tempestus Elite Carapace Backpack will do it, and some of the +1 rate of fire stuff will also do it, but it does benefit from Firearm Mastery. So when you can get free attacks from there, and you can also increase the amount of shots that it does from the staff. Basically, the way this works is you take the universal powers from Soldier that will increase all of your damage whenever you do hit a certain amount of enemies, like Rack and Ruin, and then you can stack it with doing high multiple attacks with like Linchpin and Inspire to really push your damage up, and then you do a big Sanctic staff from the Sanctified Staff from Act 2, which is incredibly overpowered because it turns Resolve into damage, and you stack that for a massive nuke AoE. So yeah, very, very, very fun build. Pyromancer Berserker, you can use with shield and axe, 2 axes, or a 2-hander. It was my very first run on my very first ever play. You can use Death World if you really want, but Forge World will give you more upfront and more armor, whereas if you go light armor, then obviously Death World can stack agility, so you can use agility and armor that way. Works the same as all my other Arch-Militant builds, where you just keep changing attack type, stack versatility. You can use powers after single melee attack to actually increase versatility, so this works very well with that. Shields you can use, but yeah, Invigorating Resolve, Malpain Shroud, if you get 2 points into Iconoclast, will drastically up your damage, and you can also use 4 swords with Blade of Light if you wanted to. So 4 sword and shield, 2 force swords. You can even go in the Heretic force sword, but that is Act 4, so yeah, we just need more Act 4 and Act 5 content. Death Engine is basically just a heavy gunner build, the same as my Argenta build, except that it uses the passive pyromancy talents to armor strip and do a crap ton of damage, as well as being Fortress World. So it's uses Artifice of Power Armor, so you can do 1 AP burst. Pretty good. It's just basically a shotgun and a heavy burst build that has the pyromancy passive, so it channels the powers of the warp but doesn't have any risk of exploding. Psyker Doomslayer is the same as my 1.4 Heinrich's chainsaw build. Basically, you use the heavy amounts of rock swords hits to do multi-strike hit. You build up Orchestrate Flame, you build up Inflame to do high damage. So you do a lot of raw fire damage, a lot of base damage that you can increase with stuff like Malpain Shroud and Iconoclast, as always. And you also stack loads of dots that do loads of damage. And the more armor strip you do, the more damage you do from Medicae. Being a warrior, it can't stack it as high as Blade Dancer, but it's still very good. Then the Demon Summoner build I covered briefly in the Heinrich's video, but basically you just stack all the gear, which is listed here on the side, that causes Perils of the Warp to summon demons, and then you use Warp Buffer from the Cybraven as long as enemies are within the dome and you're within the dome. Enemies explode instead of you and summon a demon. The demon will attack anyone. So yeah, it's really fun. And the reason I go Blade Dancer is Blade Dancer can carry itself, so there is something called Harvest, where you can blow up your Raven that's a heretic, and it'll summon 4 demons. And the reason we go Blade Dancer is Blade Dancer can solo the encounter by itself, and with the Cybraven dead, obviously you lose your entire tier 2, so it's like none of these levels exist. So you're essentially just level 15 Blade Dancer. But because of all this sort of stuff, and you'll have high buffs because you'll be spreading that with your biomancy, you'll be able to survive the encounter. It's very good, it's very strong, and it's just a very fun little gimmick. It's not a build that I'd recommend for your first run, but once you're more familiar with the system, that's when you want to look at that. So the last two that going on to the bottom here are non-pyromancy builds. So White Mage, just heavy buff support. So Cybraven to AoE buff, you cast the buff on the Raven, it spreads to the whole party. It's much safer than Nidora, who explodes. Stuff like the Decisive Response, so you can get easier buffs out. You put on Spirit Drape, so your buffs cost 0 AP, which you pick up in Act 2. Yeah, it's really strong, really good. You just keep buffing and you keep boosting at ally stats. It will pretty much guarantee that you'll always win because of that, and I've listed some items that you can use with it. This is a Be Smart telepath build. Like I said, Be Smart is not very good. It's very good on paper because being able to scale both fellowship and intelligence from a single stat sounds great. In practice, however, intelligence is the worst stat in the game with no support for some reason, whereas fellowship is the most supported stat in the game. So you just make yourself objectively weaker by trying to focus intelligence instead of fellowship. But because of it, you do get very good uses out of Grand Strategist, because Grand Strategist uses intelligence for defensive buffs and it uses fellowship for offensive buffs. If you can scale them both from intelligence, you get both. But the thing is, like I said, without someone to use prescience from Diviner, it is very hard to build up intelligence, because there's only one item in the entire game, and that got added in DLC 2, and it's Act 4 exclusive to Solomon being in your party and alive for a colony decision. But you will do very good damage from the fact that you are a telepath. The telepath psychic scream is very good. Big AoE. Sensory deprivation is absolutely fantastic for debuffing enemies. And like I said, psychic assault will do major damage. So yeah, it's a very strong and enjoyable build. The last two are variants of Dark Judge, which is basically it's a gimmick build. It's an offhand shotgun with a hammer, and it will work just like a normal warrior, except that you can use offhand shotgun shots with your weapon combat to do some AoEs, which will benefit from crowd kill, opening strike, and easy target. So it's just for the vibes. Like, this isn't a meta build. It will still be able to beat through unfair, because I've designed it in a way to be really efficient, but at the same time, towards the end game, the shotgun you'll barely use, but it's very fun in the early game sort of thing. I also put in Judge Death, which is a Castigator Operative build, which is going to use a lot of the stuff that I spoke about with Castigator on an Operative Fortress world with shotguns. So yes, very fun. It does use a lot of the stuff from also arc rifles, but I don't build into lawful intervention early, so that can be a bit of a problem. You might possibly want to swap around lawful intervention and spare magazine, but that means you get your reload stuff both towards the end. Thinking about it though, lawful intervention, it's such an important talent to be able to parry enemy attacks coming at you. I'm going to put spare magazine there, and I'm actually going to move back the armor strip. Yeah, I think that flows better. Or lawful intervention, it's too good to take later. You need that shotgun parry and to be able to do those attacks in melee. But those are sort of all the builds. So this will give you a really good overview. If you also watch my talent one, where I go through and I explain what talents do, that should help with this video to sort of explain all the playtesting. But I hope that's been really helpful for you guys. Any questions, do comment on the video or come to the Discord to ask me. And if you need any help tailoring any of them to some of your playstyle, then yeah, don't worry about just sending me a message. I'll get back to you. But thanks for stopping by. Thanks for sitting through boring nerdy spreadsheet video. And like I said, anything that was unclear, leave me a comment and I'll see you next time. Thanks for stopping by.